Well, maybe it is Quinn's fault. I don't know. Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Have attention, please. All quiet, please. Thank you. Go ahead, take your notes out. We're going to wrap up. We're going to do the review for the test. Somebody has made a motion to delay the test by one date. Is there a second? Right now, it's scheduled for tomorrow. All right, well, I'll just take it, because here's the deal. And I'm okay with moving to Friday, we'll take a quick vote on that. If we move it to Friday, that means that we'll start our next unit tomorrow. So we'll do notes tomorrow, okay? So the review will be today, because that's what I got scheduled for you today. All right, those in favor by a show of hands in moving it to Friday. Okay, so we'll do it on Friday. Okay, you guys got it? Okay, no worries. And I told you that option did exist. Obviously, there's something that is very pressing on your minds. You just want an extra day. As you'll see when we do the review, Ashton, you do need to know stuff, right? I mean, my test is 65 questions, and 50 of them are matching. And I do like to put together like little clumps of Eastern Europeans all in the same little section. I've got a group of Muslims all in the same section. Yeah. So we'll go through and we'll do the review for that today. Questions? Good. And I think I've got EE meeting, because I'm doing the Viva Voce. You guys get all your Viva Voces and everything in and so forth, so that y'all are happy and everyone else is happy, and then you can start getting closer and closer to the day when you graduate from North Star. Okay? That'll be a sweet day. Questions, comments? I think we actually covered pretty much most of the material. I'm going to play. And actually, yes? What? You guys miss out. Dana Carvey, you guys do not appreciate the comedic genius of Dana Carvey. You're like, he did the church. Haven't you guys ever seen him do the church lady? Oh my gosh. Okay, it's okay, because, when old people are like, that was really funny, you're like, you're so old. That was funny back in my day, when we used to go out and look at rocks roll down the hill. Yeah, we didn't need apps or updates. We just looked at grass growing. Dana Carvey was hilarious on SNL. He had this one character. Look it up, write it down, look it up. It's funny. And if you don't think it's funny, you suck. I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, ooh, harsh judgment, really? No, of course, because young people use so less harsh judgments on old people. Boomer. So, yeah, it comes around. Yeah, have you, Wayne's World. Oh, yeah. He's Garth, Wayne's World, right? Mike Meyer. Okay, Mike Meyer, the voice of Shrek. And Dana Carvey is like in Wayne's World. Whoa. Whoa, there you go. Yeah, watch the movie. Watch the second movie. I think that was it. Dana Carvey he had so many different great characters. He did the church lady, who was, if anyone is involved in faith organizations and so forth, the church lady. She's everywhere. My cousin would do a great impersonation of the church lady. That's like somebody who's just a little bit more special than you are. Just a little bit more judgmental and so forth. So she would have, it was like a talk show thing, and they'd bring on guests like Madonna, and immediately light into it, isn't that special? You just sort of do all this, and you work yourself around and so forth and so on. And we know who's really in charge, Satan. Anyway, this is Dana Carvey doing these great impersonations. And then she also did the drums. You're like, what the heck? Church lady does the drums? And she would do the little superiority dance. Oh, you think it's a little bit of that, yeah. But Dana Carvey, as you saw from that, and that was fascinating because who was the one I'm trying to think of on SNL recently that did all the impersonations of Trump? Oh, come on. You know what I'm talking about. Why is I'm drawing a blank. No, he was an actor, and he hated Trump, and Trump hated him, right? I mean, there's a number of Trump impersonators, but that was why it was fascinating, that we had this George H.W. It was almost like they said, almost like a different time. I mean, I like a George H.W. Bush, and I'm reminded of my dad and the political arrangements that existed back in those days. Republicans, Democrats, they disagreed, but they were not disagreeable. So it was really cool, and I think that was really cool because Dana Carvey, he would make fun of the president, but it was in a way that George H.W. Bush knew how to laugh at himself. And I thought it was very telling that when he was defeated, because I tell you what, in politics, I remember that, because when my dad lost his last race in office, that sucks. It's like we had a victory party on the election day, and everyone was crying by the end of the party because the election returns came in, and your guy lost. That was like fired. That is a low moment. When Bush lost his effort for re-election in 1992, that was a low moment. And so his staff in the White House was not feeling too good. So he thought, I know what'll cheer him up. Invite Dana Carvey to come over and be part of the Christmas party. And yeah, it was like, so anyway, homage to George H.W. Bush. And I think we gave him, because it was interesting, because at the time of his presidency, his popularity went way up, but then it went way back down again because the economy wasn't doing that well. And he could kind of fumble a little bit, right? And that's what Dana Carvey made fun of. It's like, bad, bad. He would emphasize one word and so forth. And he'd do these little hand things. And one of the Dana Carvey's favorite ones was, wouldn't be prudent at this juncture, And it's like, people thought at times and so forth, oh, this guy's a bit of a dork. I think history has probably shed a favorable light on George H.W. Bush since then. And it's partly just because of character things, his political opponents didn't hate him. They liked him and they worked together on certain kinds of things. And and he actually was very adept. It's no easy thing to win a war and be friends with the loser in the Cold War. And he was able to pull off a massive coalition victory in the Persian Gulf War. Okay? And knocked out Saddam Hussein, but pulled right back. Things are complicated. All those issues in the Middle East are complicated. Trump had difficult challenges. Biden has the same difficult challenges. How do you deal? It was like I was reading today. We've got a military base in Iraq. Just got hit by missiles. What do we do? You're like, we probably know who fired them off because they're missiles that the sophistication that the Iranians built them probably gave them to some of their supporters in Syria or whatnot. What do you do? What's that? We got American base got hit within the last 24 hours. So what do we do? Last time we did that, when we struck some of their bases. So it's complicated. Oh my gosh. So I wish you all very well as you go through your long lives, hopefully, and try to sort out some of these things because they haven't been easy in my life going through. In fact, the weird thing is the Cold War, wrongly so, appeared simple. Good guys, bad guys. And of course, it wasn't so simple because some of the bad guys were on our team, right? Some of the Central American, South American governments, they weren't really good in the sense that they respected human rights and had democracy. They had some bad things going on. But it was everything was so simple in the Cold War. You're with us, you're against us. Well, now we haven't been in the Cold War since 1991. And it's not very simple. It's not simple at all. Okay? No. So, take a quick look at, we'll get John Green giving his spin on things, the end of the Cold War, and crash course, and then we'll do our review. Okay? All right. You ready? Here we go. John Green.
Hi, I'm John Green. This is Crash Course U.S. History, and we've finally done it. We have reached the moment where we get to talk about the presidency of George H.W. Bush, the second most important man named George Bush ever to be president of the United States. A man so fascinating that we did not give him a face.
Mr. Green, so we're almost in the present.
Well, we're never really going to get to the present from the past because we're always in the past. But you years in the past, which is soon going to create a time paradox that I cannot possibly deal with. So I'm just going to let Hank deal with that over on the science shows. Anyway, despite calendars and everything, the 1990s really began in 1988 with the election of George Herbert Walker Bush, who had probably the best resume of any presidential candidate since Teddy Roosevelt. I mean, he was a war hero, having enlisted in the Navy upon graduating from high school, and then going on to become the youngest pilot in Navy history. He flew 58 missions in the Pacific during World War II and received the Distinguished Flying...
I told you the story about this, right? You don't remember? Do you remember this, Jackson?
No.
Because you did your IA on Japanese aircraft.
Yeah.
George H.W. Bush's aircraft was shot down.
By Japanese aircraft.
He was in the water, and the Japanese fighters were like going around to not only having taken out the aircraft, they want to take out the pilot, because that's like lots of experience and so forth. And what prevented them from taking out George H.W. Bush in the water? Some American pilots that were up in the sky fighting off the Japanese so that he could ultimately, right here, be pulled out of the water and go on to continue his time in the Navy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, who was one of those critical American pilots that protected the life on George H.W. Bush on that day? Boise architect Nat Adams. Yeah. Boise architect Nat Adams, who was a Navy pilot at that time. You're like, Boise architect? Yeah, he was a friend of my dad's. He built our cabin up in Stanley. Yeah. You never know. Your next door neighbor could be the guy who saved the president's life. So your neighbors with Lee Harvey Oswald. Oh, okay, there we go. Right? Yeah. Yeah, it's like one of those plots where like, oh my gosh, you go back in time, and then there's like this really good person, and they're going to be killed, but then you intervene and save them, but then that changes the whole line of history and bad stuff happens. Right? Or would you go back and kill baby Hitler? Wow, baby Hitler didn't do nothing. Or would you go back and mentor young art student Hitler and say, well, if you tried this brushstroke a little bit more, have you tried expanding a little bit? Maybe you'll have a better chance of getting through your IB art thing. And I don't know, whatever. But there you go. An Idahoan helped save the life of George H.W. Bush on that day.
Cross for completing a mission in a burning plane before ditching into the sea. So just consider that the next time you complete a heroic mission in Call of Duty 4. After the war, Bush went to college at Yale and then moved to Texas, where he made millions in the oil industry. Then he became a congressman and then ambassador to the UN and then director of the CIA and then vice president. The guy had more careers than Barbie. Plus, like every great American politician, George Bush grew up in hard, scrabble poverty, working his way through
No, he didn't.
Just kidding. He was the son of Connecticut Senator Prescott Bush. But I guess after like 20 years of peanut farmers and former actors, America was ready to have an aristocrat at the helm again, as long as he pretended to be from Texas. Like certain crash course teachers wearing striped polo shirts, George H.W. Bush was an old-school Episcopalian, so he was never totally comfortable with, like, public professions of faith. So when it came time to pick his vice presidential candidate, Bush chose J. Danforth Quayle, a.k.a. Dan, a young family values senator from right here in Indiana. Now these days, of course, Dan
like
Quayle
Pence.
is primarily known for getting in an argument with a fictional
Seriously.
television character named Murphy
Like
Brown,
Mike
and
Pence.
also for not being able to spell the word potato. But once upon a time, he was a promising young Republican. Bush's opponent in that 19...
Did you hear about the
story? I'll tell you that one.
Oh, he did like visit to some school and so forth, and they were doing some spelling bees, so he like tried to relate to the kids and asked one of the kids like to spell the next word, and they spelled potato. He wasn't looking at the thing there. The kid spelt it. How would you spell potato, McKinley? P-O-T-A-T. How do you end potato? Just with an O. And he said to the kid, no, you got it wrong. There's an E at the end of potato. In plural, you add an E to it, right? Because otherwise it's potatoes, whatever. I don't know. Who came up with this stupid thing? And people made fun of Vice President Quayle because he corrected a kid on the spelling of potato when he actually, the kid, I think, got it right. How many of you guys spell potato with just an O?
Me.
How many of you guys spell it with an E at the end of it? Is this like, are we going to do a poll and figure out the Democrats, a higher percentage of them spell it one way and a higher percentage of Republicans spell it the other way? Oh my gosh. What has this country gotten into? Seriously? Is there like a Democrat, a partisan difference in how you spell potato? I hope not.
The 1988 election was Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis, who was perceived as competent but kind of heartless and weak and a little bit clueless. As this famous picture of him in a tank indicates, he was not a war hero. But at the beginning of the Democratic primary, the leading contender was actually the Reverend Jesse Jackson, who had a legitimate shot at being the first African-American Democratic presidential nominee. That would have to wait, because instead the Democrats chose the northern liberal Governor Dukakis and paired him with Texas Senator Lloyd, I'm going to make Dan Quayle look good Benson, which I bring up primarily to point out that Texas actually used to have Democrats. So negative campaign ads had existed before 1988, but the 1988 election took it to an entirely new level and ushered in the era of going negative in politics. Like everybody says they
Which
hate
is
negative ads, but
not
they also
stopped.
work. Like the Bush campaign's efforts to make Dukakis look weak on defense and crime were brutally effective. The most infamous ad featured Willie Horton, who while on furlough from prison committed rape and murder. And even though Dukakis' Republican predecessor had actually started the furlough program, the Horton crime occurred while Dukakis was governor. The ad worked. Dukakis was regarded as a liberal who was weak on crime. In fact, it was George H.W. Bush who was the first to use the word liberal as an insult in American politics, which represents the larger shifts that were happening. So in retrospect, possibly the most important thing about the 1988 campaign was George Bush's famous pledge at the Republican convention, read my lips, no new taxes. No way that's going to come back to bite him. So once he was president, it's not surprising that Bush focused more on foreign policy than domestic concerns. I mean, that was his background with the UN and at the CIA. But it also makes sense in the larger historical context because the Cold War actually ended during Bush's presidency, even though no one ever gives him any credit for it. I mean, the Berlin Wall came down, Poland's military rule ended, the Velvet Revolution happened in Czechoslovakia during Bush's watch. Let's go to the thoughtful. The end of the Cold War was really a failure on the part of the USSR rather than the result of successful American policies, but it left the U.S. in something of a policy limbo. I mean, after all, the idea of a super powerful, malevolent, Bowser boss Soviet Union poised to destroy the American way of life provided a comfortable structure for all our foreign relations for almost 50 years, as well as providing the reason for massive military buildup and all the jobs that came with it. One positive result of the end of the Cold War was a reduction in nuclear weapons. Under Bush, the U.S. and USSR negotiated and implemented the START I and START II treaties, which limited the number of warheads each country could possess to between 3,000 and 3,500. I mean, that was still enough to end human life on Earth several times over, but it was amazing progress. The collapse of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War led President Bush to declare the dawn of a new world order. But calling it a new world order didn't make foreign policy any easier. Without the Cold War to orient us, foreign policy issues were much more confusing and messy. So, for example, Bush kept the United States...
We'll cover that and that.
...disintegrated in 1991, turning into a bloodbath. But he sent troops into Somalia to help deliver food aid, resulting in the botched operations...
We'll cover that, too.
And then there was the foreign policy crisis that Bush handled decisively. Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait in August 1990. Bush brought the issue to the UN and ushered through a Security Council resolution that set a deadline for Saddam to leave Kuwait. When he didn't meet the January 15, 1991 deadline, the U.S. had already put together a coalition of 34 nations ready to make him leave. America first launched a spectacular air war that destroyed much of the Iraqi defense capability, and then our technological prowess was on display for the world on CNN, which featured coverage of smart bombs blowing stuff up. When ground troops, led by General Norman Schwarzkopf, finally moved in, they were able to defeat the Iraqi army in just 100 hours. Thanks, Thoughtful. So the Iraq War...
Oh, yeah. Pause right there. That's like Dead Alley, where all the Iraqis were trying to get the heck out of Kuwait, and they just got gunned down from the sky by U.S. forces. Yeah, ouch is right. It was a shooting gallery.
It's a huge military success. America lost fewer than 300 soldiers. Iraq suffered somewhere between 1,500 and 9,500 killed in action. And the U.S.'s military objectives had been achieved clearly and quickly. And Bush claimed that the victory had forever banished the so-called Vietnam syndrome, the reluctance to use American military power for fear of becoming bogged down in another
Because that hasn't happened again.
If the Americans had supported Iraqi efforts to topple Saddam Hussein and build a new Iraq, we might have achieved that objective as well. But the mission under the UN resolution was to get Iraqis out of Kuwait, and so that's what we did. Bush didn't want to take it any further. Oh, it's time for the mystery document? I read a mystery document, I either guess the author correctly or I get shocked. All right, let's see what we got today.
See if you can guess it.
5 of the 7 agree with President Bush that the war is just or at least necessary, but not one wants to fight in it. All are opposed to a draft, though a few said one might be necessary as a last resort. They said they would gladly serve in non-military public service jobs. This might sound selfish, but I think it would be a shame to put America's best minds on the front line, said Jason Bell, 20, a junior English major from Elizabethtown, Kentucky. If we have to go, we have to go.
What is this?
But I think it would be a shame. Yeah, Jason Bell, that does sound selfish. All right, Stan, this is from like a newspaper or magazine. I assume that you are using it to call attention to the fact that this was really the first big American military initiative without a draft. And it also reminds us that the war was not universally popular. I mean, at least before it was fought. After it was fought, it pretty much was. But I have no idea who actually wrote the piece in the mystery document. How would I know that? It's a famous journalist? Is it like David Halberstam? No? David Moranis?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Does he have a Wikipedia article, man?
Oh, yeah.
A Wikipedia article? All right, apparently he does have a Wikipedia article. He even won a Pulitzer Prize, so congratulations,
Oh, yeah.
sir.
He's a
So
major
Gulf War lifted
author about
President
presidents.
Bush's approval rating to an unheard of 89%. And in April 1991, it looked like there was no way that George H.W. Bush would lose his re-election bid, but he didn't consider the domestic issues that were kind of important to Americans. We are very happy to talk about all the wars that we are fighting, unless and until someone raises our taxes. So Bush wasn't much interested in putting together a domestic agenda. He once called it the vision thing. And anyway, he would have had a hard time getting anything through the democratically controlled Congress. So Congress continued to pass New Deal-style liberal legislation, including expanded funding for Head Start and welfare, as well as the Family and Medical Leave Bill, which Bush vetoed twice, but eventually passed nonetheless. With the Family Medical Leave Act, of course, America joined every other country in the world in offering paid maternity and paternity leave to new parents. What's that? We didn't? We still don't have that. We still don't have paid leave. Oh, God. However, you are no longer allowed to be fired for 12 whole weeks while you take unpaid leave to care for your child.
I did
That's
that.
why Stan couldn't replace
Our
me with
first kid.
text-to-voice software after my daughter Alice was born. But in news that actually was sort of cutting edge, Congress also enacted the Americans
a
with
big deal.
Disabilities Act in 1991. Okay, before I talk about the recession that ended George Bush's presidency, I want to talk about Rodney King. Because this revealed huge figures in the American population and called into question the achievements of the rights revolution. In April 1992, an all-white jury in Simi Valley found 3 of 4 policemen not guilty of beating black motorist Rodney King, even though the incident had been recorded on videotape. After the verdict, Los Angeles erupted into the deadliest riots seen in America since the New York City.
That's never going to happen
52
again.
people were killed
Oh, wait,
and
it happened last
2,200
summer.
injured in
Never
rioting
mind.
that caused $1 billion
Oops.
in property damage. So obviously, race remained a volatile issue in the U.S. It was also an issue that Bush seemed unprepared to deal with. Like, he toured burned-out L.A. neighborhoods, but he had little in the way of real comfort to offer, which contributed to the perception that he was this millionaire, Ivy League-educated Washington insider who was out of touch with regular Americans. But the biggest issue to most Americans was money. America fell into recession in 1990, and the slump lasted until 1992. It might have been caused by the end of the Cold War and subsequent reductions in defense spending, or by Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan's sluggish refusal to lower interest rates, or maybe the economy just needed to reset at a lower number after growing every year since 1982, or maybe macroeconomics is more complicated than who's president, and sometimes people unjustly get blamed or credited for things that they had very little to do with. Regardless, 4.5 million Americans lost their jobs, and the unemployment rate rose from 5.3% in 1989 to 7.5% in 1992, its highest level in almost a decade. Along with the many thousands of manufacturing workers who lost their jobs in America's continuing deindustrialization, white-collar workers were thrown out of work too, and college graduates, of whom there were record numbers, couldn't find work as they came out of school. Stop me if any of that sounds familiar. One person who struggled to find a job after
There'll be
graduating
jobs when you
from
finish
the
school.
was none other than Crash Course writer Raoul Meyer, who after sending 100 resumes out, got 3 job interviews and ended up working at a small independent school in Alabama where he became the teacher of me from the past. Now, the recession was certainly bad for Bush politically, but what probably destroyed his re-election hopes was the whole taxes thing. In 1991, with tax receipts dropping and spending not slowing very much, President Bush did something that now seems undoable.
He raised taxes.
He authorized a tax increase. And in doing this, he really called his conservative credentials into question, especially in the eyes of small government-wanting, libertarian-leaning Republicans. They'd never really trusted the faux Texan Bush anyway, but he had said, "Read my lips," and they believed him. But it turned out he had no lips. Now, when coupled with Bush's lukewarm support of the evangelical wing of the Republican Party and his running mate's inability to spell the word potato, it all prompted a primary challenge from conservative commentator Pat Buchanan, which he beat back easily. However, some of the GOP voter base, especially evangelical Christians, stayed home on election day. Then there was also a third-party candidate, Texas billionaire and Muppet impersonator H. Ross Perot, who won 19% of the vote, the best third-party performance since Teddy Roosevelt in 1912. All of this came together to open the door for a pudgy lad from Hope, Arkansas, who never inhaled marijuana and didn't cheat on his wife except for sometimes, named William Jefferson Simpson. Looking back from today, the fascinating thing about the George W. Bush administration is that it seems like a weird interruption in a larger narrative. For a couple decades, we'd seen increasing conservatism and rising partisanship, and then suddenly George H.W. Bush comes along and everybody kind of works together. They didn't always make good decisions when working together, but they did make decisions. But what's really fascinating to me is that if you're from Eastern Europe or China, this period was one of the most important in history. Whereas if you're American, arguably the most important thing the leader of this era ever did was raise George W. Bush. For better and for worse, America didn't really change that much as a result of the end of the Cold War. But we're creeping up now on the growth of the internet, which will change the way that Americans and everyone else imagines history and everything else forever. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.
All right, there we go. Get a little perspective on that. That was quite the change in what was going on in the world. So let's get right to it. We're going to do our review for the test. What did I say? 65 questions, 15 true false, 50 matching in groups of 5. Lots of people, concepts, etc., etc. Shall we get right into it? Okay. Quinn, do you want to go first, or you want to call on somebody to go first?
I can try to go first.
Well, you can try, and if you need help, people will put their hands up, and you can call on them, and then they can give the right answer. Everyone can write this down, and so forth. Let's go along with this one. Let's go Russian. Let's get a Russian name for us. Give me the Russian name. This one was a foreign secretary under Gorbachev, obviously the last Soviet leader. He was foreign secretary. Later, he ended up as the president of independent Georgia. Who was this guy? So he would be in your packet. Let me see if I can help a little bit. Episode 23. Oh, study, you've got time. 48 hours now instead of just 24.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm going to call him somebody.
Well, you can call somebody, yeah. But does anybody have their hand up yet? Episode 23. I mean, that really narrows it down. Oh, we got an answer. I know there is. You need to learn a lot of stuff. McKinley. Nope. Starts with an E. That guy. Yeah, Eduard Shevardnadze? Yes. Yes. I understand that you haven't met, some of you guys probably haven't been reviewing your notes lately, okay? But you definitely want to over the next 48 hours. What was that? It's your Germanic name. Oh, okay. Well, anyway, he's in that section. Yep. So who goes next? Quinn. Eduard Shevardnadze. Okay. And I'm recording it too. Okay. Who'd you say? Landon?
Yep.
Okay, Landon. Another European name. Give me the name of this guy. Give me the name that he was known as when he was in Poland as a archbishop. Eventually, the Roman Catholic Church tapped him to become Pope John Paul II. So don't give me the name Pope John Paul II. Give me the name that he held before he became Pope John Paul II. Let's see. Yes, it's in episode number 19. Oh, Landon, do you see it? We got a hand up if you don't want to wait. Jackson looks really confident. He's got his hand up, reaching for the stars.
It was Carol Joseph Wadzawaya.
Watia. That's how you pronounce the last name, or at least closer than what you were saying.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. All right, Carol is correct. All right, very good. Landon, who goes next? Ashton. All right, we have some folks from the Middle East. I want to say ding, ding, ding. Yep, all of them are Muslim. All right, give me the name of this leader, Muslim leader of Pakistan. He was anti-communist, and the United States was able to funnel all kinds of weapons into Afghanistan through his Pakistan to help fight against the Soviet Union in the 1980s. Who was the leader of Pakistan at that time, the military dictator of Pakistan? Episode 20. Yep, there's a whole bunch of them there in episode 20. Yep. And his first name is the same name as the first Muslim. No, not Taraki. And is a very common name of Muslims, which doesn't really narrow it down that much because I've actually got several of folks. We got a bunch of hands up, Ashton, if you want to. He's so close. That's the first name. That's the first name. Wait, no, Ashton's still got it. He hasn't called on anybody yet. Gosh, Mary, just elbows, you know. I'll take this. Ashton, are you going to answer this or are you going to call on somebody? Mary's ready. A whole bunch of people are ready. Okay. She's not so sure about it. No, it's okay. Muhammad? Nope, that's not the one. Different Muhammad. Ashley, you want to call on somebody else? We got some hands up. Confident? No, not Muhammad Najah Abullah. Wow, we got two Muhammads wrong. Ashley, you want to call on somebody else? Mary's got her hand up again. She looks a bit more confident this time. Nope. Oh my gosh. How many different ones are there? I don't have that many on here. Zia al-Haq. Muhammad Zia al-Haq is the president, military dictator of Pakistan. Okay, Ashton, who goes? Rodrigo. All right, give me the name of, I'm looking for a German. I got actually 3 Germans in this particular group. This is the last hardline East German leader. He's not the last East German leader because there's going to be one guy that comes in, Egon Krenz, after him. But who's the last hardline East German leader? Honegger's right. Yeah, very good. Yeah, all right, way to go. All right, Rodrigo. Who goes next? Erich Honecker. Okay, remember he was a bit old and a little bit out of touch. Remember he was hosting the thing and everyone was cheering for Gorbachev? Yeah. Rodrigo, who goes? Jacob. All right, this is not a name of someone. This is, yeah, let's go with this one. This is, you can either give me the 3 words or you can give me the 3 initials for Reagan's proposed missile defense system, also known as Star Wars. SDI. Anybody know what that stands for? Very good. All right, good. Jacob, it goes. Okay, Sage, give me the name of Gorbachev's policy for economic restructuring that included a fair amount of capitalism ultimately? It is one of those two. Okay, the other one would be openness and like free speech sort of thing. So which was the one, the economic restructuring? Yep, perestroika. And the other one is glasnost. Gorbachev's policy for economic restructuring, including some capitalism. Okay? All right. Sage, who goes? Did you say Mary? Okay, Mary. Give me the name. Gorbachev had in mind, and ultimately he wasn't really able to put this quite together. He wanted to go from the USSR, which everyone's part of the Soviet Union, to a more loosely based organization. It didn't quite come into existence, and eventually all of the countries, all the republics that you see right in my posters, ended up becoming independent. What was the name of that effort that Gorbachev tried to put together, or the three initials? This would be, is that episode 23? I don't know. It's in 24. The very end. So what is the initials or the name of that entity that he wanted to create, and it didn't quite come together, certainly didn't last very long after he was removed? Do you know, Mary? We got some hands. We got a couple hands over, 3 hands over in this direction. That's one thing that you had looked up and found, but there was another thing that Gorbachev had in mind that's very similar to that. And look in episode 24, and that's going to be the one that's going to be on the test. Do you want to go for it, Jacob? Commonwealth of Independent States, okay? Commonwealth of Independent States is ultimately, and that won't actually meet fruition and so forth. Okay? Yep, CIS. Okay, Mary, who goes? Who? Oh, Trenton. All right. Landon's going to know this one for sure, but Trenton's going to answer it. What was the location of a major Soviet nuclear power plant disaster, which is actually now located in the current country of Ukraine? That's what I want. Yep, Chernobyl. That's right. Very good. Okay, what is Chernobyl? I think so. It's in 22. Okay, Trent, who goes? Nope, she's going to. All right, I've got some quotes in here. In fact, if you, I'll just throw these ones out because they're on the test, and if you need a reminder when the test actually takes place, because the original test that I did was under the old IB history thing that had a lot more as far as like the fall of communism in China, which we didn't have time to cover as much. See if you can identify, just this is a bonus one, okay? This is a bonus one. Deng Xiaoping, the guy on the far right of my poster right there of the Chinese leaders, who was the Chinese communist leader and so forth after Mao died. Have you guys heard that one? It doesn't matter whether a cat is black or white, as long as it catches mice, it's a good cat, right? I mean, I've said that multiple times. What is he talking about there? Yeah, as in capitalism. Okay, that is correct. Could you also name the quote, and some of you guys may have heard me say this as well, which was the one that Deng Xiaoping's like, I'm not going to screw up like Gorbachev did and try and move too quickly. I want to move to capitalism bit by bit by bit so it doesn't create too much disruption. Do you remember that one? You remember that one? What was that one called? Very good. Cross the river by feeling the stones. All right, good. And here's one that you guys should all know, and I'll ask you this one as well. Who said, this is too easy. This is way too easy. No, not let's build a wall. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. No, it's not John F. Kennedy. Oh my gosh. Oh. John F. Kennedy, he said it in the same place that Kennedy made his I am a donut. I am a Ich bin ein Berliner. Okay? Yes, it was Ronald Reagan. Oh my gosh. You got all the hard, like, Chinese ones, and you're like, you tripped over the Reagan one. All right, who goes next? Nope, Jackson's going to do this one. Jackson, I got a Russian for you. Russian. Okay. Oh, yeah, you need to. I got 5 Russians. Okay. Give me the name of this guy. Gorbachev didn't like him too much, although he put him in as his deputy Soviet president. But this guy turned the knives on Gorbachev and participated in the failed coup attempt in 1991 and was subsequently arrested and then was let out of jail. Who was one of the top leaders of the coup attempt? And I think this is going to be in episode 24. Yep, he's in episode 24. You can call him somebody if you want.
Was his last name, or was part of his name Yanev?
Gennady Yananev. Yeah, or Yanaev. Okay, very good. All right, Landon goes. Or excuse me, Jackson goes.
How do you spell it?
Episode 24, Gennady Yanayev. It's got a Y in it. Who goes?
Garrett goes.
Okay, Garrett, give me the name of this Eastern European. This is the last Polish communist leader, and he didn't put up a fight. Ultimately, he went peacefully. And actually, he was mentioned earlier. The first time he shows up is in episode 19. So who was the last Polish communist leader? And he wore glasses, sunglasses in the inside. They're like, anybody got their hand up for that one? Okay. Jaruzelski, yeah. What did she say? Jaruzelski. Yes. Okay, episode number, what is it? 19. No. Wojciech. Yeah, I'm not really 100%. Yeah, Jaruzelski is accurately pronounced. Okay, Garrett, who goes? No, Garrett pointed to Sage. Who's going to go? Ashton can go again. Oh, sure, fine, Ashton, go again. Give me the name of this man. He was a politician in the United States of America, and he supported efforts in Congress to get funding for the Afghan rebels. He also liked to throw hot tub parties and was played by Tom Hanks in a movie that mentions his name. Got Stinger missiles to the Mujahideen. I'm going to get too many of these. Maybe we'll do a little bit more review tomorrow. You guys wouldn't mind, I'm sure. CW. That's his initials. CW. CW, yeah, episode number 20. He's like one of the only clearly American names in episode number 20. Charlie Wilson. Remember Charlie Wilson's War? Fine. Yeah. All right. Let's put a pause on this. We'll do a little bit more review. Next time, though, we will start on Rwanda.
Oh, Honda.
I've been watching it. I've got one more episode. It's bloody. Oh my gosh. That's crazy. Dude. I watched it too. Dude.